let's have a look at this next story, because this next story intrigues me. Because immediately when we think about government changing legislation on resource consents to provide granny flats, I think last night, Chewy, both you and I were like, oh, hang on, oh, like a whole bunch of slumlords and unpermitted buildings going around. So let me read a bit of the story to you. Proposed law changes which would remove the need for building consents on homes under 60 square metres in certain areas are being met with enthusiasm from housing providers and the opposition, which is the interesting part. The coalition government announced the new policy on Monday, pitched as a way to make it easier to build granny flats and increase the supply of affordable homes. I don't know how affordable rentals maybe, but building a granny flat doesn't make an affordable home, but unless they're saying the rental is my home.
I think the language that they're using here, granny flats, set off my alarm bells straight away.
Yeah.
If they said tiny homes, that would be a different story. So, I mean, if one of the things around people buying tiny homes as a way of at least getting some sort of home and not renting it is getting councils to sort of consent to tiny homes has been really difficult because they're kind of grading it like a proper full-size building, and they just aren't. And then it has to have wheels, even though it's never going to be done. Like, there's lots of fuck things. Then they might be onto something. I don't trust them.
This is the thing.
But they might be.
This is the thing. The question is trust. I'll just go on with this story first of all. Opposition party Labour was backing the proposal, but housing spokesperson Kieran McAnulty said he was pleased that the homes would still have to comply with the building code. At the end of the day, we need as many homes as possible in this country if we're going to address the housing crisis. We've been critical of the government taking $1.5 billion out of the housing budget and dropping the funding for public housing. That was a dumb idea, but this one seems... it might be a good one. The story goes on, and Kieran mentions water runoff, stormwater, etc. It goes into the last part I'm going to read. Says AUT professor of construction. That means he's got the really colourful hard hat on. John Tukey said the changes would save a few $1,000s in the building process, which actually is 3/5 of fuck all if you're building a ground flat. But anyway, and would generally be a positive move for housing supply. But he agreed with concerns around water runoff and warned there needed to be recognition that the increasing housing densification would put out more pressure on infrastructure and services like drinking water, sewage, roads, schools, and GPs. There's going to have to be some sort of consideration of minor issues such as stormwater runoff, sewage requirements, water provision, he said. If we're going to get an extra couple of 100,000 people in Auckland, then we've got a couple of 100,000 people of additional water consumption that we're going to have to supply. And I think what you just said, Chewy, kind of follows on from the conversations around Luxon wanting or calling for an independent investigation into whatever went on at the Manurewa Marae. And on one level, people kind of go, well, if it's independent and it's above board, but the big thing is, do we trust Luxon? Because as we said earlier as a joke, the last independent didn't include Kāinga Ora whilst Bill English was looking at Kāinga Ora. So I guess what I hear Labour saying is generally this sounds like a good idea, but as we always say, as everyone always says, the devil is in the detail, guys. And can we trust this government to get the detail right?
Look, I'm not opposed to it. There's a bit of romanticism, though, that a granny flat is somewhere in the country where you put your mum and dad at the back. A lot of hapa and iwi saying, "Oh, this is quite exciting in terms of papa kāinga." Yeah, I get all of that, but I also live in not far away from the CBD, and last year we had major flooding, and it wasn't because of there was a lot of rain, but actually the infrastructure became overwhelmed very quickly. And I think what we could see intensification without the infrastructural planning, and sewage, drinking water. All of that is very important part of the component. So the devil is in the detail, but there are some real negatives. But I don't think it's a discussion, a debate that we should shy away from simply because it's National's idea. I think there's some merit in it, but You know, I know that most of this will take place in bigger cities that have got major infrastructure deficits.
Here's the big concern for me. It seems both Labor and National are talking about building granny flats. And the way it's being said, and Chewy, I think you kind of echoed that as well about tiny homes, is building something on the back of your property.
Yeah.
Now, I know a little bit about granny flats because when I lived in Auckland, we had 3 properties like after each other, all of which we had people living in the basement. I think a granny flat in a lot of places is a basement flat.
Yeah.
And I know that when we converted a basement in West Auckland in Titarangi, it cost us then $25,000 to completely refurbish it. And my mate bought a place in South Auckland, a 2-bedroom, maybe even a 1-bedroom unit for like $250,000, and we were getting the same rent. So it was actually much more financially advantageous to convert downstairs. Now, when we converted downstairs, we didn't get consents. We did things properly, but we didn't get consents. And I know other people wouldn't get consents to convert downstairs. We'll just chuck a kitchenette in there and there's already a toilet. We'll find a place. They're the kind of granny flats that concern me, not so much the ones that are a new build out the back or a versatile, cottage that they put out the back, that kind of stuff. And I know that the guy who did our plumbing for this place we put in underneath, we needed to have a sump outside because it was underneath the level of the pipe. So it went into a sump and then it got pumped up and out. And he said, without word of a lie, we'll just put a rubbish bin in, a plastic one, and then we'll get another rubbish bin and turn it upside down and put it in on top of it. It's the cheapest way to do it. And we went, how would you do it properly? And properly is it's a concrete vessel and it's sealed. But he would have very happily just have put a rubbish bin out there as the overflow to then pump the waste out of that up into the thing. So they're the granny flats that concern me more, that won't need the consents that the current ones do, rather than the cottage out the back of the property.
The problem we have, and look, we like most people out there watching and listening, you normally talk about your own immediate experience. The problem we have is that in Tamaki Makaurau, the code compliance is dated right now in 2024. One of the things that we don't have enough of around here are natural soakholes, wetlands, etc. And if you're just going to build, put a concrete block on the back of where I live, and there's plenty of room to do that, and same with my next door neighbours, you're just going to have the next time it pisses down like it did last year in February 2020. February the 26th. You're just going to have an intensification of those problems.
I guess when it comes to them floating this policy, is who's it for? Who do you think National is going to design this for? Is it for a landlord who can squeak in another profit-generating unit into the same property that he has? Are we going to see more of those absolutely dreadful garage conversions? Or are we having someone sort of go, maybe how we do housing in New Zealand needs a look. Maybe not everything needs to be the quarter-acre paradise or 4-bedroom home. Maybe people need a different way of living. I'm not confident that they're thinking in the long term, because that's what we haven't had out of this government. We haven't had that sort of thinking. I'm also concerned about the fact that they seem to be overreaching councils by going, you don't need council involved. Don't worry about it. When we know that council's infrastructure for 3 waters is absolutely under the gun. And then, of course, what you've mentioned, Shane, is that we are staring down the barrel of worse weather events. It's just laughable. I can't trust them.
I think Daniel might have an answer. He says sewage treatment is woke. Pump it straight into the sea.
Well, in large parts of Tamaki Makaurau, that happens. Every time there's a downpour, the shit flies out to our seas. And that's why our beaches are closed more often than not, actually.
Hey, I'll play you something else. This is on the same kind of subject, but Chris Bishop was in a press conference. I think this was yesterday. This is thanks to stuff.co.nz, their little kind of TikTok account. And It's a really interesting dynamic because I would think the supporters and voters of National do not want house prices to go down. But Christopher Bishop seems to be on this tightrope of housing's too expensive. Oh, so you're trying to push the price of houses down? Well, there's other ways we can handle it. But if housing's too expensive, what do we do? It's too expensive. And he kind of does, but won't, but sort of will, but won't talk about driving house prices down. But of course, what their answer is, I should say, is of course everyone should just earn more money, and then housing is not quite as expensive because you can afford it. So it feels like they're trying to dance this little dance at the moment. I'll play it for you, where they're acknowledging that housing is too expensive, but they're not prepared to put things in place to drive the prices of housing down because they know their voters and funders won't want that. Yet they can't ignore it. So they're kind of stuck in this middle ground of having to half say things and not say other things. Have a listen.
The price needs to reduce.
We want housing to be more affordable for New Zealanders. That is a major work stream of this government. Average house prices in New Zealand are too expensive. Average house prices to average household income are too high. By any objective measure, they are severely unaffordable by international standards. We now have one of the most expensive housing markets in the developed world.
Just semantically, you're saying something a little bit different there, though. You have previously said that house prices need to drop, which shivers up the spines of every homeowner in the country. So do you still think that house prices need to fall?
Well, I'm not sure I would put it in the way that you put it. So the flip side of house prices falling for people who own homes is that they become more affordable for people who don't own homes. And there is a whole generation of young New Zealanders who have been locked out of the housing market because average house prices are too high. And then you ally that with deposit requirements from the Reserve Bank through the LVR restrictions.
Okay, so we could change deposit requirements. That could be something. That's a way around that problem as well.
It takes an enormous amount to pull together a deposit to get on the housing ladder. So the flip side of making housing more affordable for Kiwis is, yes, people who own homes may look at that and say, I'm a little bit worried about that, but they also have, in many cases, children and younger people who are trying to desperately get on the housing ladder and can't right now. So the flip side of that is it becomes more affordable. And if we're going to be a property-owning democracy, which we used to be, we need to make housing more affordable. And it is outrageous that average house prices in New Zealand have risen faster than any other OECD country in the last 2 decades. There are many reasons for that. A big one is our planning system, which we are sorting out. And today's announcement is just one small parcel of the wider planning reform we've got underway.
I mean, you are effectively saying house prices need to fall. And from my memory, you're the first government to have ever said that. Jacinda Ardern could never bring herself to say.
I think he's panicking now. Did I say that? Did I say that?
Mine was she wanted to see them not increase as much as they were. Is it significant that you're saying they need to come down?
Well, you'll be the, you write a column every week, Thomas, so no doubt you'll write a commentary about it. But there are lots of ways to make housing more affordable. One way is sustained moderation in house prices. Another way is to go for growth and have a sustained lift in incomes in this country.
There you go.
So that people are better able to afford housing that is more relevant to them.
So there you go. So you got to run away from that a little bit, kind of caught on the fence there, Shane. You were going to say?
Oh, look, look, none of the major parties, let's be honest, really want to invoke a policy that does see prices of houses drop. That's just the reality. But the other thing is that there are other things that have an impact on housing that we don't talk enough about, and one of them is the sustained debt that many Kiwis are in for a lot of their lives as a result of student loans. You know, and you've got people my age still paying them off. Still paying off the student loans, and when they go to the bank, that's taken into consideration. And of course, you've got private debt through credit cards, etc. So there are a lot of mechanisms that we need to look at. When he talked about Aotearoa New Zealand being, well, he didn't use that term, but I do, being a property-owned democracy. You know when that occurred? When the fucking state built state houses, and that's the answer.